Today's episode invites us to look at the ocean and life on Earth from a completely different perspective. Because before forests, before animals, before us, there was plankton. These tiny, often invisible drifters are not just a part of the story of life, they are the foundation of it, shaping the air we breathe, the climate we live in, and the cycles that make this planet habitable. But not all plankton plays the same role. Some help regulate our climate and sustain human life, while others thrive in the very conditions we are creating through warming and pollution. In his upcoming book, The Power of Plankton, ocean advocate Vincent Doumeizel explores this extraordinary complex world, one that connects biology, chemistry, water cycles, and even the future of our societies. And perhaps most importantly, he suggests that by understanding plankton better, we might also find unexpected solutions to the polycrisis we are facing today. Hi, Vincent. Thank you so much for joining me on the HealthySeas podcast. It's so great to have you here today.
Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So I'm excited that we're going to be talking about your new book. And with that, I want to dive deep into the world of plankton. At the start of this book, you quote The Little Prince. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Why is plankton the quote-unquote invisible that is essential, but something very few people really know about?
Well, I think that's because they are invisible that very few people know about them, but they are really the unsung hero of the planet, clearly. I mean, they are, for the most part of our life on the planet. If you look at life, back 4 billion years ago, some planktonic organisms started to evolve and meet each other and change and exchange and share and collaborate. And that has really started the most incredible epic of all time, which is the story of life and evolution. And over the next 3.5 billion years, that was just plankton. Plankton it gathers a wide range of organisms. I mean, anything that cannot go against the current is plankton. It has no limb.
What do you mean it can't
Against the
go?
current, yeah.
It can't swim.
Exactly. It means wanderer or drifters in Greek, in fact, planktos. And our planet is a plankton planet, basically. I mean, and planet and plankton come from the same etymology. You know, the planet is drifting. I mean, it's wandering in space, and plankton is drifting in the ocean. And for most of its history and its biology, our planet is a plankton planet. So it shapes life, it's terraformed the planet, it created everything we know around us. The stroke of genius from plankton was when they invented photosynthesis back 2 billion years ago, and then they created the water cycle and the carbon cycle, and they created oxygen, and they created all form of life we know, the rocks, the oil and everything. But because they are invisible, we never really considered them. Everything is still to be known and to be understood when it comes to the most fundamental part of life on our planet. So if we understand plankton, we know the planet biology, and then we can repair our planet. And if we want to repair your house, you're not going to start with the roof, you're going to start with the foundation, with the first floor. The same with life on Earth. So if we want to repair life on Earth or preserve it, let's start with the foundation. And foundation is plankton.
So plankton does include many things. Can you explain what it is or what's included, and how is that diversity also its superpower?
Exactly, that is, yeah. Well, we started to think that because we started to work on biology on Earth, on land, on continent, and then we try to apply this in the ocean. The problem is that in the ocean, life is way more diversified because way older. I mean, life started on continent back 500 million years ago, while it started 4 billion years ago in the ocean. So life is way more diversified. So we categorized plankton between phytoplankton, which is like the vegetal plankton, and zooplankton, which is the animal plankton. But actually in the ocean, most of plankton is both. They are both animal and vegetal. They do photosynthesis and they are eating other organisms at the same time. So they are literally both animal and vegetal. We could call them vegetables, but we actually call them mixoplankton, which is not that fun. These tiny organisms, they can be like microalgae or unicellular algae, mostly. There will be fish larvae, crustacean larvae, small, tiny crustacean. They can be as well bacteria. They can be our most known ancestor, which are archaeas. There will be fungi, but microscopic fungi, mostly drifting in the ocean. There will be also some animals, some planktonic animals are quite famous to us, like jellyfish. Jellyfish, they are planktonic because they cannot go against the current. They are drifting in the ocean. And some of the jellyfish, like siphonophores, can be very big. And the tiniest plankton will be virus, because virus is also part of plankton. And the funny thing is that if you compare the size of a virus, of a small virus, to the size of the longest jellyfish, which is 100 meters long, the siphonophore, which is a very long jellyfish, it would be like comparing the size of an ant to the size of Great Britain. So we are talking about a very different organism here, which is why it's also difficult to understand, because most people will relate plankton to mysterious creatures that are invisible, or to krill, because we know krill because the whales, they feed on krill, so we have heard about krill, or to the evil character of a cartoon, Bob the Sponge, as a evil character that is made of plankton, which is the only famous plankton we have in the popular world.
I actually never knew that jellyfish would be considered plankton as well, just because they can't swim against the current.
Exactly, it is, and that's a very interesting plankton, but we may come back to that, because actually they are the ones that may dominate the planet tomorrow. Because jellyfish, just to make a small digression, they strive in everything we do to them. And it's fascinating, just like plankton is, because plankton is full of resources because of these 4 billion years of evolution. So yeah, maybe tomorrow will be not the planet of the ape, but the planet of the jellyfish. That's more likely, actually. But it shows as well, and that's the most fundamental part of it, that all our ecosystem is based on the planktonic ecosystem, because the planktonic ecosystem defines the ocean ecosystem, which defines somehow the Earth ecosystem. And if we change this ecosystem, life will not disappear. Life will keep existing, but it will be just different, and most of the existing species will disappear, including our species. So that will be the interesting part.
So you mentioned this 4 billion years of evolution. What has the role of plankton been in it, and in our evolution and the evolution of the Earth? How has it played a role?
That plankton first invented, which is the stroke of genius, photosynthesis. So 2 billion years ago, life was only without oxygen, only out of methane and stuff like this. And plankton had one cyanobacteria, it's a bacteria, had a crazy idea, which was to use carbon dioxide to create living matters while releasing oxygen. The issue then was that was a very toxic gas for any form of life. So 99.9% of life disappeared at this time, even the one that has created this photosynthesis. But some tiny organism remains, and they learn how to breathe, what we call the breathing, the cells breathing, and use the oxygen for life. And they are the ancestors of any form of life on the planet, almost any form of life on the planet today. And they release a lot of oxygen over history. So they created the planet full of oxygen as it is today. I mean, without plankton, there would be no oxygen on the planet. And then they had another stroke of genius, which was to create multicellularity, which means organizing the cells. I mean, life was unicellular for the first 3 billion years. And it's interesting to think and to realize that evolution and success as a whole emerge much more from collaboration than from competition, because they share their skills, the different plankton, and they create multicellular organism and so forth, and they create the carbon cycle. They sequester carbon in the deep ocean in order to create a living like a temperature as it is today. They create a cycle of nutrients. They release gas in the atmosphere, producing rains, producing clouds first of all, and then rains, creating the water cycle. So all the geochemical processes that we have on the planet were created and are still triggered by plankton activity. So it's really the source of everything we have there. Phosphate, phosphorus, nitrogen, and everything, all our nutrients, they are recycled and managed by plankton. So they created the rocks. I mean, most of the rocks we have on the planet are dead plankton, actually, that have sedimented over the years. The big mountains, they are all made of plankton. I come from France, and if champagne has such a specific taste, it's because of the type of plankton that was dead and that all the different layers made of dead plankton in the very place where champagne is produced. That's what creates the specific taste. So everything depends on plankton in the end. The oil that we use and we wage war in Iran right now because of dead plankton. All the oil we have are sedimented dead algae over billions of years. And every year we consume 1 million years of sedimented plankton with our oil consumption. That's the basis of everything. It has really terraformed the planet, created all the big geochemical processes.
And explain to me how plankton is responsible for processes like I think you mentioned the carbon cycle or the water cycle.
Yeah.
Things like that. How is plankton related to that?
First of all, oxygen creation, it's easy. Photosynthesis, so you absorb that carbon dioxide, you use the light of the sun and you release oxygen. So for the first 3.5 billion years, plankton created all the oxygen on the planet, and most of the reserve we have in the atmosphere come from plankton. And still they do. And the plants that we have on the planet that are creating the other part of the oxygen we have are only descendant of planktonic microalgae that team up with fungi, and so they created the condition for life on continent. So they created everything we have on continent, and all the vegetal we have come from a tiny microalgae in the ocean. And we do as well, by the way, and so is our goldfish and anything. Comes from all of them. We all come from planktonic organism. And then as for carbon cycle, it's easy. Depending on your plankton, type of plankton, some plankton has a shell and some do not have a shell. The thing is that if you have a shell, you will create what we call, and it's quite poetic, the marine snow. Because at the end of your life, you will sink in the ocean. So constantly you have a marine snow that is sinking in the deep ocean in the sediment.
Which is all these dead shelled plankton.
The dead shell of plankton, yeah.
Okay.
So you have constantly like a lot of, if you look with a microscope, a lot of organism sinking in the ocean. And this biomass sinking in the ocean is taking the carbon from the surface and obviously from the atmosphere and sink in the deep ocean. And doing that, they cool down our planet. Once again, 30% of the greenhouse gas are absorbed by the ocean, and 99% of the biological carbon pump in the ocean is made from plankton. Because plankton is 90% of the life below water. Anyway, most of the biomass is planktonic. And doing that, they sequester carbon and they create the climate we have. And once again, if today the changes we make in our environment do support more the plankton without shell than the one with a shell. So if there's no shell, the plankton dies at the surface and release the carbon in the atmosphere. So there's no carbon sequestration. So the climate will warm up more and more. And then that's the end of the game. So once again, plankton creates the carbon cycle and creates the climate we have. They also are releasing a specific gas, the dimethyl sulfur, that is creating the clouds and that is creating the water cycle, because without the clouds there's no water cycle. They are creating indirectly the fresh water that is so critical. And they are also recycling nutrients such as phosphate and nitrogen, which are the fundamentals for life on the planet as well. So everything is triggered by plankton once again.
It's the shelled plankton that capture the carbon and then sequester it as it falls to the bottom of the ocean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the one.
Just for clarification,
the living part will create oil and the shell will create the rocks once again.
Yeah. And as the ocean acidifies, those shelled plankton are...
Exactly. It cannot strive with a warmer climate and more acidification. And the dinoflagellates, which is a specific type of plankton that do not have shell, they are proliferating. They love this type of condition, but they don't have shells. So they are replacing the diatoms and the coccolithophore, which are those currently dominating plankton, with a shell that are contributing to maintain the climate. So this replacement does enable climate change as well. So that's quite worrying. So we should
because they don't
maintain.
absorb the carbon like the other
Yeah,
ones.
because they do absorb the carbon, but they release it almost immediately while dying because they don't sink the carbon in the deep water. The critical part is to sink the carbon in the deep ocean, because once it's the deep ocean, it's in the deep ocean. What's in the soil of the deep ocean, then it's stuck there. You cannot get released to the atmosphere. If it stays at the surface, it will be released in the atmosphere, and then there's no sequestration. That's the key part. So if it doesn't sink, it's a big deal for us, a really big deal.
And plankton also teaches us various powerful stories of symbiosis and cooperation. Can you tell us one or two?
So corals are made of a symbiosis between the coral, the animal, and the microalgae. And without them, they die. And coral is such a very strong host is hosting so much biodiversity. Like if you take 1 square kilometers of corals, you have more biodiversity than in the entire United Kingdom, So it's really something really big. And they depend on microscopic organisms. But we all do the same. I mean, basically, we are living out of plankton. In our guts, we have bacteria, we have archaeas and fungi, and even some microalgae that are helping us to digest. We call that the microbiome. So we are like a planktonic organism in the end, and it's all the same.
What is the state of plankton today? What are the biggest risks?
The biggest risk is that we change the communities. Once again, there's a balance for plankton, and if we change this community, it's going to be a big deal, basically. We will not survive. If we manage to maintain these communities or optimize them for us, then once again, we will strive and survive and find as many resources as we need. We'll be able to clean the ocean, we'll be able to treat our sick, and we'll be able to get food as much as we want. We'll be able to clean plastics from the ocean, to clean all the pollutants, and so forth, and to create a lot of biomimicking innovation. One example, the most common plankton, diatoms, they are able to create a shell of glass in the ocean. So they create a shell of glass at 4 degrees Celsius or 3 degrees Celsius. We need 1,500 degrees Celsius to create glass. So if we could just learn from them, from this tiny unicellular organism, it would save a lot of energy. Some plankton are bioluminescent, of course, so they are creating source of light. There were some projects already starting to use this light to light the cities, typically, without electricity. So there's so much innovation to be made out of plankton, but we just need to understand them. And that's where is the beauty of it, is that now we are in a position to understand them.
How is the elevated levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere affecting them now? And also just other forms of pollution. How are they affected by these human impacts?
So with our pollution, we will influence very largely the proliferation of some plankton that could be toxic for us, or the proliferation of some others that could be beneficial for us. The question is, what do we do to support our existence? And so far, we don't really know. But once again, I'm confident we will very soon.
What should we be doing to restore it and keep it in balance?
Understand. The first thing is to understand what we have in the ocean, what are the mix of plankton, and where we are going with them, and what are the interactions. Because it's one thing to understand who's there, the other thing is to understand how they interact. This is an incredibly complex food chain there. I mean, an incredibly complex ecosystem and totally unknown. It's like a sunken Atlantis that emerged from the shadow of the ocean, a civilization that is predating ours, but still there. So that's what is fascinating. So we have a lot of things to learn from them. So we need to understand them and then see how we can support them in our benefits, basically. And for that, once again, we have new tools that are helping us a lot. We have DNA sequencing, genomics, HD microscopes, artificial intelligence to understand these in level of information that is so complex. We have a satellite because, of course, the color of the ocean, we did not mention that, but the color of the ocean is defined by plankton. So you can understand where they are, where they are going, who is living where, out of satellite images as well. All of this is coming together right now. And if you see the boom of the plankton research over the last 10 years, it's just unbelievable. 10 years ago, we knew about 40 viruses in the ocean. Now we know more than 500,000. We have discovered 150 million new genes in the planktonic, mostly planktonic genes in the ocean over the last 10 years. 150 million, this is just massive. We have 20,000 genes in our body, totally. So you can imagine 150 million genes, what it represents. This is just unbelievable. And we are still to understand what they are doing, all of them. So there's a potential for innovation which is just incredible for the upcoming years, and which is once again shaping up a very nice future full of promise for the next generation. Because if you understand how these communities are living, then you understand the core biology of the planet, you understand the core system of our planet, and then you are able to repair it and to take care of the planet.
It's the understanding of the foundation that you mentioned before.
We will not save the plankton. The plankton will be here, and it's here to remain. We will not save the ocean. The life in the ocean will remain. It will stay there. But the plankton may save us in the end. That's the thing.
In terms of innovations, is there bioremediation and biomimicry potential with plankton as well?
Bioremediation and biomimicry there's huge potential about that. Once again, we don't know much, but we know that plankton can create hydrogen, it can create oil, obviously, because it has created oil and it keeps doing that. It can create glass, it can recycle elements. So yeah, I mean, the biomimicking potential is almost unlimited. So there's so many things we can do, and it will provide new source of medicines as well for us. That's the core of everything. So our cells, they are in high demand of this kind of organism. So yeah, it's all there. We just have to research and understanding and research and understand it. And then here we go, we'll be in a position to save the foundation of life on our planet.
Could some of the solutions also be risky because they can transform plankton into a new exploited resource?
For anything we have, the question is not the type of resource we have, is but what we do with them, of course. And my hope is that we learn from our mistakes and that the next generation, which you can see that much more concerned about ecological topics than we were, than I was at least, when I was like 10 years old. And when I go to school, I have a lot of questions about this kind of risk. And I would not have asked this question when I was their age. So I'm quite optimistic and hopeful that they have learned from our mistakes and they will do things in a different way. So of course, everything is risky, but we should be driven by science, which is why it will take time, why it will be not done overnight. I mean, we could possibly reverse climate change, dropping a lot of iron in the ocean to enable the proliferation of those planktons who are sinking carbon. But that would be very dangerous, and no one wants to do that, which is a good signal as well. So once again, science should go first, and we should be driven by science, and we should be very careful, of course, because we are manipulating like the core software of our computer. Like if you mess it up, there's no way, you cannot save anything there.
Yeah.
You're
responding to
no backup. There's no backup. If we mess it, there's no backup. It's done.
It's done. Yeah.
For us at least. But once again, another computer will emerge.
Yeah, life will continue, but whether it's human life is another story.
Exactly.
Like in your previous book about seaweed, in this book, you also mention some organizations, companies, and research centers that are already advancing on this topic. Can you tell me about 3 or 4 you've discovered? Can you give me a sense of the future here?
Yeah, we all know about spirulina, which is a plankton, for instance, and I think that spirulina, chlorella, this kind of microalgae, they could be part of the future because they are so nutritious, so powerful. We are yet to understand everything about them, but it's getting better and better, and you can create cycle with carbon dioxide, notably in Thailand, where they are creating spirulina out of the carbon from the climatization. So they put like spirulina farm on the rooftop of the hotel, and these spirulina, they are fed with the carbon emitted by the climatization, and then they create delicious food that can be served in the hotel.
With the spirulina.
Exactly. Spirulina is very nutritious. It's like a magic food for ages. It was known in Africa, in Central America by Aztec and so forth. So that's one example. I mean, food is a nice example. If you look at what is doing a very famous chef in the south of Spain, he has created the plankton marino, which has been his trademark, and he has 3 star in the Michelin. He had a documentary about him on Netflix. He's serving bioluminescent plankton in the plate, so it's like when you touch your plate, it's full of light everywhere. So it's crazy, and you have once again a lot of innovation. But more importantly, I think the thing will be to recycle everything we have on the planet. There is no waste, there is no pollution. It's just a bioresource that are not recycled. That's what we call waste, actually. And plankton can recycle plastic, it can recycle nitrogen, it can recycle phosphate into something positive. And that's where is the biggest potential, maybe, because you can really recreate the cycle so we can close the loop somehow. Because the biggest problem we have right now is not a problem of resource, it's a problem of the resources that are not at the right place. We have too much carbon in the atmosphere, we have too much phosphate in the deep ocean, we have too much nitrogen loss in the ocean, we have too much water in the atmosphere as well, or in the ocean. And not so all in all, I mean, it's just a question of cycle, but where is the basic element of our planet? If we restore the balance, everything will be fine. And plankton is a keystone for all of it.
And how might we be able to support the plankton to restore those balances?
Taking care of what we do on Earth. I mean, I have a funny story about these sardines that loves the chestnuts. When you have a chestnut or an oak which has leaf, then the leaf will fall and they create humus, like sediment,
a soil,
nutrients that will eventually go into the ocean, or the water, the river, and then into the ocean water. And there they are feeding plankton. And without these leaves, the plankton is starving. So if we keep planting pine tree, we have no leaves, so the plankton will disappear. So you may have big trees on land, but you have no plankton in the ocean, and you have no fish, and no big fish, and no small fish, big fish, and no sardine.
Because of that cycle.
Because of the cycle, yeah. And I think that also what we need to understand is that everything is highly interconnected, and everything we do on land has a consequences on the ocean. And we need to measure these consequences, we need to understand it, and we need to prevent the bad consequences of that. And anything we do, when we grow plants, when we build buildings, ports, when we ship, shipping in the ocean, anything has a consequence on the ocean. When we release ballast waters and so forth, that's what we need to know. What's there? What are the interactions, and how can we support them instead of destroying them? Because they are the foundation to life.
Yes, for sure. You say that the common thread of this book is plankton and hope. What gives you hope?
The 19th century has been great with Darwin and Haeckel and all these great botanists that started to discover what's life, but that was only visible life, mostly on land. And I think in the next years or so, we'll be able, in the 21st century, maybe the one for the big discoveries about invisible life in the ocean. And there we go into the really core of it and the final understanding of it. And then we'll be in a position to support the different ecosystems as we know them, to support the planet we are living in. I'm full of optimism once again and hopes. There's a lot of positive outlook in front of us using this blue information, these blue genetic resources that are unlimited, and we know not even 10% of them. So there's so much knowledge lying there, so much capacities, so much solutions to the biggest challenge we have on this planet, that I'm full of hope for the next generation. And plankton-based solutions are clearly part of it.
Once we understand the foundation of our home, we'll be able to protect our home.
Exactly. Well said.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vincent. This was
My
fascinating exploration into
Hopefully.
plankton. And good luck with your book. Congratulations with that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the HealthySeas podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, follow and share it with others who care about the ocean. Want to dive deeper? Subscribe to our newsletter at healthyseas.org/newsletter for behind-the-scenes stories, upcoming projects, and partner updates from around the world. There are many ways to be part of the mission. Donate, partner, spread the word, or simply stay connected. Explore how at healthyseas.org/take-action. Together, we can turn marine waste into waves of change.